In this episode, we'll be talking about PHP loops, and we'll be talking about three specific PHP loops: the while loop, the for loop, and the foreach loop. So let's go ahead and jump into our application, and I am going to remove the PHP from the top of the document, and we're going to start coding here inside of the HTML. So to start things off, I will create a variable and store the value of 0 inside of that variable. Then we want to add an unordered list, and we want to loop through a certain amount of list items. So I'm going to open up PHP, and we will create our first loop. So the while loop uses the keyword while, and then we pass in the parentheses a specific condition. So I can say while number is less than 10, I want to execute this piece of code. So I can say while it is less than 10, I want to echo out a list item. And I want to echo out the current number. And then we need to increment number by 1. So we learned the increment operator in the previous video. I can say number plus plus, and we will increment the number every single time we go through this loop into our list item. So let me save that. Let's reload. And you can see that inside of our unordered list, we have 0 through 9. So that is the basic while loop, and then we've also included this inside of our HTML. So this will take it kind of just one step further so you can understand how HTML gets displayed using PHP. So there is one more thing worth mentioning. There is another version of the while loop which is called the do while loop. So we can say do at the beginning and then we can add the while at the end. So this is essentially the same thing. It is just running the condition at the end as opposed to the beginning. So if I save that and reload, we get the exact same output. Okay, next let's do this exact same thing, except instead of the while loop, we are going to use the for loop. So this is the second loop that we are going to learn. And we started off with the keyword for, and then the first thing that I pass in is going to be a variable. And I'm going to say for I, and I'm just going to initially set that to 0. And then I add a semicolon, and now I need to add the condition. So I'm going to say for I less than 10. So whenever I is less than 10, we want to continue to loop through this for loop. And then the last one is going to be if we want to increment I or decrement I. So I'm going to say that I want to add 1 to I every single time we go through the loop. So now I can do the same thing as I can echo out our list item, and I can use the I variable in place of the number. So if I were to save that and we go back here and reload, we get the exact same output. So let me try and change this to 5, and you'll see that we get a different output. When we reload that, we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's just summarize this again. We have the for keyword, and inside of the parentheses, we have $I, and we set that to a certain value. And then we have our condition. While I is less than 5, we continue to execute this code. And every single time we go through a loop, we will increment I by 1. Okay, instead of printing out numbers, let's go ahead and do something a little bit more fun. Let's say that we have an array called days of week, and this is going to store the values of every single day of the week. So we'll start off with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. Okay, so we have our array for days of week, and we have 7 items, which represents 1 for every day of the week. So inside of our for loop, we can say that $I is equal to 0, and I want to loop through, I could actually say 7. So I know that I have 7 items inside of my array, so I can set that to 7, and I can increment it each time. And then what I can do is I can echo out days of the week, and I want that to be at offset I. So if I were to save this, we go back here and reload, you can see that we get the outputs of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we have just looped through each item inside of our array. And instead of hard coding this number 7, we probably want to do something a little bit better, which is use the count function. And this will count the number of items inside of our array. So if I were to save that and we go back here and reload, we're going to get the exact same output. So that is the basics of the for loop. You're going to use this quite often as you are programming using PHP, so I would definitely make sure to familiarize yourself with the for loop. So the for loop is very simple to use, but we can actually loop through array items even quicker using the for each loop. And this is the third loop that we are going to talk about. So instead of the for loop, we can call the for each loop. And the things that we will pass to the for each loop is going to be the array. So we're going to pass the array, and then we're going to use the keyword as. So for each item in this array, we want to represent that as the day variable. So now I can actually just echo out day. And if I were to go back here and reload, we get the exact same output. So you can see that using the for each loop as opposed to using the for loop just makes it so much easier. And you will typically use the for each loop when you're dealing with arrays and objects. And we haven't talked about objects yet. That will come in a future video. But just remember, whenever you're trying to loop through an array, you are probably going to use a for each loop. So let's change this up just a little bit. Maybe instead of days of week, I want this to be food items. And inside of this array, we will store milk, eggs, and cheese. So this will function exactly the same. We say for each food items, and maybe we want to call this, instead of day, we want to call this food. And then since we called it food here, we need to use that inside of the loop. So if I save that, we go back here and reload, you can see that we get milk, eggs, and cheese. And that is the basics of the for each loop. I would definitely recommend checking out all of these loops, getting familiar with them, and kind of just playing around and using them. It is going to make building your application a lot more fun, and this is really where you start getting into some more advanced kind of stuff where you can loop through loops and you can mess around with data and just kind of have some fun. So those are the 3 PHP loops that you will be using throughout applications that you build using PHP. Again, there is the while loop, the for loop, and the for each loop. So make sure to play around with these, get familiar with them. It makes programming a lot of fun. You can loop through any amounts of code. You can have loops inside of loops. It can get all kinds of crazy. So make sure to check out loops, study them a little bit, and give them some practice. But that's it for this video. I will see you in the next. Hey, thanks for checking out this PHP Basics video series. I hope you follow me on Twitter @TNYLEA. And if you're interested in moving on to the next video, go ahead and click right up here. And if you want to check out my latest course called SaaS Adventure, be sure to click right there, and it will teach you how to create your own profitable software as a service. But that's it for now. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video.